Leah sat in the back seat, gripping a folded sheet of paper so tight her fingers turned white. I'd seen her practicing for days, in front of the mirror, pacing the kitchen, even whispering through the shower steam. She'd written the whole speech herself, all 14 years of her pouring out onto those pages like it finally meant something. She wanted to be part of the night. She thought maybe this time they'd let her be. My name's Fiona. I'm 38. I live just outside Indianapolis, and this story starts in a hotel ballroom that smelled like shrimp cocktails and expensive denial. We walked into the party right as the band was warming up. Round tables with gold cloths, fake roses in glass vases, a podium dead center up front. Big cake, bigger egos. My parents, Edward and Donna, stood near the head table like they were royalty. My sister Kimberly, of course, was already playing hostess, her voice a little too loud, her smile just too perfect. Quick note, before we get into it, tell us which country or city you're watching from. I'm curious where you're listening in. Leah stayed close to my side, clinging to her note cards. She was nervous, but ready. She had this light in her eyes, like maybe this time, someone would actually see her. Grandpa's over there, I whispered, pointing her toward my dad. Now's a good time to ask if they still want you to speak. She nodded and walked up to him with shaky shoulders, card in hand. I hung back, letting her do it herself. I watched. He smiled when he saw her, but it was that tight kind. The one he gives before he says something disappointing. He bent down a little and patted her arm. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw the exact second her face changed. A blink, then the smile dropped. My mom stepped in a moment later, smoothing Leah's hair and gesturing toward Ethan, my nephew, standing near the mic, already holding note cards that looked way too professional. And just like that, the slot was gone. Kimberly announced him with flair, called him the pride of the next generation, or some garbage like that. Leah didn't say a word. She just walked back to our table, slipped the note cards into her purse, and stared down at her plate. Ethan gave some speech about family legacy and quoted Maya Angelou like he even knew who she was. The room clapped like trained seals. Leah didn't blink. Then they called me up. Fiona, our eldest, say a few words. I stood up slowly, heart pounding. I didn't have a speech, but I had a purpose. I grabbed Leah's purse off the chair. Her eyes snapped to mine. I walked to the mic anyway. I reached the podium and set the note cards down. The mic was already on. I didn't look at Kimberly or Ethan or my parents. I looked straight ahead and let the room settle. It was one of those fake polite hushes. People expecting a few sweet words, maybe a tired joke about being the oldest daughter like I always did. Not tonight. I was going to say something from me, I started, but instead, I'm going to read something that should have been heard tonight. A few heads tilted. A couple of the younger cousins laughed softly, thinking I was joking. I didn't smile. This was written by my daughter, Leah. She asked to speak. She practiced for days, and no one gave her the mic, so I'm giving it to her now. Silence. I picked up the first card and began. Hi, I'm Leah. I'm 14. Some of you know me. Some probably just think of me as Fiona's quiet kid. That's okay. I just wanted to say a few things about Grandma and Grandpa, because even though I don't talk much in front of people, I have things to say. I heard a chair creak somewhere near the back. My mother's arms crossed hard. I saw it out of the corner of my eye. Kimberly whispered something to her husband. I ignored them. I remember one time when I was about 6, Grandpa let me sit on his lap while he watched golf. I didn't understand the game, but he explained every single part of it like it was the most exciting thing in the world. He said, Leah, it's not about how fast you move, it's about how focused you are. I still think about that a lot. The room was quieter now. No laughs, just breathing and the low hum of the ice machine behind the bar. And Grandma. One time she told me I looked like her when she was younger. That stuck with me, even though I didn't know what to say back then. I don't always talk when I want to. I have a stutter, and sometimes it makes me feel like my words come out wrong, so I keep them inside. But I've been practicing. I glanced at Leah, still sitting at the table, face frozen, wide-eyed. Her hands were clenched in her lap. I practiced this speech a lot. I messed up a few times. I cried in the bathroom once, but I kept going, because I really wanted to say thank you to Grandma and Grandpa for the times they noticed me, even when it was small. Someone sniffled. A fork clinked against a plate. Ethan suddenly found something interesting on his phone. Even though I don't talk a lot, I notice everything. I see how people treat each other. I see who gets listened to and who gets talked over. And sometimes being quiet doesn't mean you have nothing to say. It just means you're waiting for the right room to say it in. I paused. The room didn't move. Not a single chair squeaked this time. So thank you, Grandma and Grandpa. I love you. And I hope this counts, even if I didn't say it myself. I looked up. That was the last card. I could have added something. A ribbon on top. A thank you. But I didn't. I stepped back from the mic and walked straight to our table without looking at anyone. No applause. Then, slowly, a few hands came together. Light clapping from the far side. Cousin Maria. Someone from my dad's poker group. One of the waitresses, maybe. Polite, unsure, like they were afraid to be the first ones. My mom didn't clap. She just stared at the floor like I'd farted during grace. Kimberly's jaw was tight. Her husband looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. I sat down next to Leah. She hadn't moved. I didn't say anything. I just placed the cards in front of her. Her fingers hovered over them for a second before she picked them up and slipped them back into her purse. Still not a word. The program moved on. Someone announced the cake cutting. Music started again, awkwardly upbeat. People shuffled around pretending the air hadn't changed. But it had. One of the older cousins, Annette, came over and leaned toward Leah. That was beautiful, sweetheart. You wrote that all yourself? Leah gave the smallest nod. No smile, but her shoulders weren't as tight. I just wanted to say it meant a lot. You're brave. Another woman I barely recognized from the extended family line came by and said something similar. Then one of the teenagers who usually ignored Leah gave her a fist bump. She didn't return it, just looked down. But I saw her lip twitch like she didn't know if she wanted to smile or cry. We stayed for the cake, barely touched it. No one else brought up the speech. But when we left, Leah walked 2 steps ahead of me, not behind. Leah tossed her purse on the hallway table and went straight upstairs. She didn't say goodnight. I let her be. I stayed up just long enough to yank off my shoes and check my phone. Missed call, voicemail, mom. I didn't play it. Not then. When I opened my eyes the next morning, the house was too quiet. No cartoons, no microwave beep. Just early sunlight and the weight of what I knew was waiting on my phone. I grabbed it off the nightstand. 1 voicemail, 1 text. Kimberly's read, "Nice job making the whole night about you. Maybe next time, ask before hijacking someone else's celebration. No greeting, no emoji, not even a period." I rolled over and hit play on Mom's voicemail, holding the phone out on speaker. "Fiona, I cannot believe you. That was not your moment. That was not Leah's moment either. You embarrassed this family in front of everyone. What you did was cruel, to me, to your sister, to Ethan. You ruined a perfectly good evening. Do you feel better now? You stole something that didn't belong to you. I hope it was worth it. I let it play to the end." Then I tossed the phone on the comforter and got up to make coffee. Leah came downstairs 5 minutes later in the same sweatpants she always wore when something was too big to talk about. She didn't say anything until I handed her a mug of hot chocolate and slid a plate of toast toward her. What did Grandma mean? Did I do something wrong? I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. No, you did everything right. But she's mad. She's uncomfortable. People get loud when they don't want to look at the truth. She picked at the corner of her toast, eyes on the wood grain of the table. I wasn't trying to, attack anybody. You didn't. You thanked them. You told the truth. If someone's hurt by that, that's their problem. She didn't respond, just sipped her drink and nodded once. By lunch, the whispers had started. I saw them roll in. Cousin texts, a Facebook message from one of Mom's church friends asking if I was okay. A screenshot from Maria, a group chat where someone called me dramatic and said I'd weaponized a child for attention. I didn't reply, didn't post, didn't argue. I vacuumed the stairs, folded laundry, took out the trash like it was any Sunday. Kimberly's name popped up again on my lock screen around 4 p.m. Ignored it. Let her stew. Mom didn't call again. Not that day. By dinner time, Leah was curled up on the couch, knees to her chest, half watching something on Netflix. I sat next to her, close enough that our arms touched. She didn't look at me, but I felt her relax. Is this how our family is? She asked softly. Like, all the time? I paused. Yeah, pretty much. She blinked slow, then nodded like she was filing it away. No tears, no drama, just her trying to fit the pieces together. I let her, and for once, I didn't explain anything. I didn't make it easier because she didn't need easier. She just needed the truth. Leah fell asleep halfway through the second episode. Her head rested against my arm like it used to when she was 6. I sat there with the remote in my hand, not moving. I didn't need the TV on, my head was already full. I kept thinking about her sitting at that table, holding onto those note cards like they were her spine. And I kept thinking about that moment her face changed, when she realized they'd never planned on giving her the mic. It hit me in a way I wasn't ready for, because I knew that look. I'd worn it. I turned the volume down and just said it out loud. Maybe for myself more than for her. They did the same thing to me. It came out flat, simple. But the truth of it sat heavy. I used to talk too much. Not like loud or chatty, just explainy. Long answers, too many details. I'd get cut off mid-sentence or corrected before I finished. My dad would sigh. My mom would put a hand on my arm and say, "Just get to the point, Fiona." I'd flush and shut up. Kimberly never had that problem. She'd waltz into a room and make it hers. Say something outrageous and they'd call her confident. She'd lie about winning a school award and they'd laugh like it was clever. If I said the same thing, I was dramatic or difficult. At some point, I got the hint. I became the helper, the one who knew where the extra chairs were, who remembered the cousin's birthday, who cleaned up after dinner while Kimberly worked the room. I told myself they didn't mean anything by it, that maybe I just wasn't built for the spotlight like she was, that maybe it was easier for them to hear her than to listen to me stumble through the words I wanted. And God, I used to stumble. Not a stutter like Leah's, just hesitation. I'd start talking, then doubt the word halfway out of my mouth. Second guess, start over. Try to read the room and rephrase. I must have sounded like a damn browser with too many tabs open. But nobody helped me slow down. Nobody pulled me aside and said, "Hey, your words matter." They just stopped asking. I watched Leah breathe softly next to me and felt something shift in my chest, like steel cables winding tight. She asked, she worked for it. She practiced until her throat went raw, and she cried in the damn bathroom, and they still chose to ignore her, just like they did with me. Only this time, I knew better. I wasn't a kid anymore trying to earn scraps of attention with good behavior. I wasn't going to teach my daughter how to shrink to survive. This time, I saw the pattern, and I wasn't going to excuse it. It was never an accident, not with Kimberly always front and center, not with Leah getting pushed out of a moment she earned. They weren't thoughtless. They were intentional. And the worst part? They probably thought they were doing the right thing. Protecting Leah from embarrassment. Keeping things on track. Same polite bulldozing they always did. But they didn't get to decide who mattered anymore. I reached over and brushed the hair off Leah's forehead. She shifted a little, but didn't wake up. "I'm not letting them do it to you," I whispered. She didn't hear it, but I did. And I meant it. The next afternoon, Leah dropped her backpack by the door, walked past me without a word, and went straight to the fridge. Normal routine. But when she finally sat down at the kitchen table, she pulled out her phone and turned the screen toward me. It was a picture of a flyer, kind of blurry. Something about a teen storytelling night at the local library. No fancy title, no sponsors. Just speak up, share your story in bold letters. I waited. She tapped the screen with her nail, then asked, "Should I do it?" I didn't blink. "This time, no one else gets the mic." She didn't smile, but she didn't look away either. She took that picture on Monday. By Tuesday night, she'd pulled her speech cards out of her purse again and laid them on the kitchen table, smoothing each one flat like they were glass. She didn't ask me for help, just read them out loud again and again, stopping when her voice caught, then starting over. I didn't coach her, didn't correct, just sat nearby, folding laundry, paying bills, and let her work. Wednesday, she practiced standing up. Thursday, she picked out the same black dress she wore to the party. I watched her hang it on the closet door. I almost said something, maybe suggest something more casual, but I stopped myself. She already knew what she wanted to say. Now she knew what she wanted to wear when she said it. Friday night came fast. The library auditorium wasn't anything special. Folding chairs, stale air, a little wooden platform up front with a busted stool and one mic stand. No stage lights, no photographers. Just a few dozen people, parents, teachers, bored teenagers with phones out. The kind of crowd that could either be kind or brutal, depending on the secondhand embarrassment level. Leah sat 2 rows from the front with her hands folded in her lap. Calm, but not relaxed. Like her body was sitting still, but her brain was pacing. She wore the same small gold clip in her hair, the one my mom gave her a year ago. I noticed it, but I didn't say a word. One by one, kids went up. Some were funny, some awkward, some way too long. There was a girl who ranted about cafeteria food and a boy who cried halfway through a story about his dog dying. Nobody clapped just to be polite. They clapped because they meant it, and that made all the difference. Leah was the last speaker. They called her name, and she stood up slow. I watched her walk to the mic, shoulders pulled back like armor. She adjusted the height, looked at the audience, then down at her cards. Her hands trembled. I could see it. She took a breath, then started. Hi, I'm Leah. I'm 14, and I wasn't supposed to speak the last time I had something to say. A couple people in the front row shifted. Everyone else stayed still. I was at a party, and I wrote a whole speech for it. But nobody gave me the mic. They gave it to someone else. Because I'm not loud, or charming, or the favorite. Her voice cracked slightly, but she kept going. I have a stutter. It's not always obvious, but it makes people uncomfortable sometimes. So I got used to staying quiet, even when I had something worth saying. She paused, looked up. That night, my mom read my speech for me. And people clapped. Some didn't. But I realized something. You can't wait forever for permission to speak. A few heads nodded. One of the event organizers leaned forward, elbows on knees. So I came here to say it in my own voice, in a room where people chose to listen. No tears, no shaking now. Just her, standing up there, voice clear and steady. I don't want to be quiet because it's easier for everyone else. I want to be quiet when I choose, and I want to speak when I have something to say. Then she lowered the mic, nodded once, and stepped back, and the room exploded. Not in a dramatic, over-the-top way, but real, loud, earned. People stood. Some clapped with both hands high. One kid yelled, "Let's go, Leah!" And the rest laughed, not at her, with her. She walked back to me with red cheeks and shiny eyes. I stood up and wrapped my arm around her, and this time, she didn't flinch. We stood there for a second, arms around each other, soaking it in. The clapping kept going longer than I expected, not out of pity. Not that forced, look how nice we are applause. This was something else. Real. Leah didn't smile wide, but I could feel her chest rise a little taller under my arm. The first person to come up was one of the adult organizers, a woman in a navy cardigan with a clipboard and a badge that read Maggie, event lead. She crouched a bit to meet Leah at eye level. That was incredible, she said. You have no idea how many kids needed to hear that. Would you ever consider being on a youth panel we're putting together next month? It's about self-expression and courage. Leah blinked. Like, speaking again? Maggie nodded. Exactly. Not a competition, just a conversation. I'd love to have you. Leah didn't say yes, but she didn't say no either. She just looked up at me for a beat, and I gave a small nod. That was enough. Then came a middle-aged man in a beanie and an oversized hoodie, who I'm pretty sure was someone's dad. He didn't say much, just clapped her on the shoulder like she was a teammate who'd scored a game-winning goal. A few teenagers hovered awkwardly, clearly wanting to say something but not sure how. One finally muttered, "That was cool," and walked away before she could respond. But Leah didn't flinch this time. She just held the cards in her hand like they belonged there. I stood to the side, letting her have it, every second. We left without drama. No balloons, no awards. Just us, walking out into the parking lot under crappy yellow lights, the air damp and a little cold. The car ride was quiet at first. I didn't turn on the radio. She stared out the window, then she spoke. I didn't know it could feel like that. I looked over. Her face was calm, but her voice was shaky. Like what? Being heard. My hands tightened on the wheel. I didn't cry, but it hit me like a punch in the throat. Back home, she went straight to her room. Not tired, just done. Like her body had finally caught up to everything her brain had carried all week. I stayed downstairs and checked my phone. 3 new texts. The first was from Maria, my cousin, the only one who clapped at the party without needing permission. She did it. You should be proud. The second was a Facebook link. I clicked it. There she was. Leah on that little stage in the library, black dress, gold clip, speaking into a mic that finally belonged to her. Maria must have recorded it. Just under 4 minutes long, posted an hour ago. At that point, it had maybe 20 likes, a couple comments, nothing dramatic. By the next morning, it had over 200 shares. I didn't post it. I didn't tag anyone, but it didn't matter. It found its way. Someone from Kimberly's circle must have seen it, because that afternoon, I got a message from a second cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. Wait, wasn't this the speech she tried to give at the anniversary party? The question wasn't rude, but it carried weight. The ones who knew, knew. Family discomfort showed up quick, whispery, not loud, not direct. That's not their style. But the signs were there. 2 aunts unfollowed me. One uncle left a passive-aggressive comment under a recipe I shared 2 days later. Some people just love attention. No one messaged Leah. They wouldn't dare. She spent the next few nights rereading her note cards before bed like they were bedtime stories. Not rehearsing, just remembering. I didn't interfere, didn't prep her for the backlash. She wasn't stupid. She'd already felt what it was like to be dismissed. But now, she'd felt what it was like to be amplified. And for the first time, the people who'd shoved her to the side didn't get to rewrite the ending. The room had heard her, and they'd kept listening. The voicemail came in before I'd even finished my coffee. I didn't rush to play it. I already knew the tone. The kind where her voice gets tight, controlled, like she's trying not to yell, but absolutely is. I hit speaker and set the phone down on the counter. Fiona, this has gotten out of hand. You need to call me now. That video? It's online, people are talking, and it's making us look terrible. I don't know what you were trying to prove, but this is not okay. You need to do something about it. Call Maria. Have her take it down. Tell Leah to stop this. Enough is enough. She hung up without even a goodbye. I took a long sip of coffee, staring at the sink. 10 minutes later, Kimberly's name lit up my screen. You've made your point. Congrats. Everyone's talking. Happy now? No period, no punctuation. But I could practically hear her chewing the inside of her cheek while typing. I didn't answer. Neither did Leah. She was in the living room, curled up with a blanket and her Kindle. Headphones in. Not hiding. Just choosing peace. I looked at her for a long time. She hadn't asked once about the video going around. Hadn't asked what people were saying or if anyone in the family was mad. She already knew. But she didn't shrink from it. And I wasn't about to drag her into the mud with them. Let them spin. A few hours later, another message popped up in a family group thread, the one we only used for holidays and last-minute potluck coordination. Cousin Denise, not sure what's going on, but maybe we should all keep private things private next time. No names, no context. But the energy was pure panic. They were scrambling, not because they'd been called out. Leah's speech never mentioned a single person, not a single name, not a single accusation. But truth doesn't need to scream. It just needs to exist. And they knew exactly what part they played. It was never about ethics or family values or respecting elders. It was about the image, the stage-managed story they'd been selling for 40 years. Clean, shiny, golden child in the spotlight, now cracked from the inside. And God forbid anyone look at the crack long enough to see the whole wall's been leaning for decades. They didn't want an apology. They wanted a cleanup. They wanted me to make it go away. I didn't. I let the voicemail sit in my inbox. Let Kimberly's text get buried. Let the group chat rot in silence, because none of this was new. What was new was them being seen, not on their terms, not in their lighting, not through their script. And what pissed them off most was that it wasn't even about them. It was just Leah, finally being heard, and they couldn't take credit for a single second of it. The invite came from cousin Maria, texted to me directly, not dumped into the group thread with the vultures. Low-key thing at Denise's Sunday. Just snacks, drinks, no drama. Come if you feel like it. No pressure, no guilt. Just that quiet nudge only someone who gets it knows how to send. I stared at it for a full hour before I said anything to Leah. She was eating yogurt and reading the back of a cereal box like it was a novel. You feel like seeing family this weekend? I asked. She didn't look up. Which family? I almost laughed. The side that's pretending everything's fine. She shrugged. Do I have to talk? No. But you can? She paused. Will Grandma be there? Probably. Another beat. Then she nodded. I'll go. Sunday afternoon hit, and I still wasn't sure if I'd made the right call. I wore jeans and a dark sweater. Neutral, forgettable. The opposite of the Fiona they expected. Leah came downstairs in the same dress from the library and the party. No cardigan, no jewelry, just her. Again. We drove in silence. When we pulled up to Denise's house, there were already cars out front. familiar ones. My stomach tightened. Leah grabbed her purse and got out first. Inside, it was exactly what Maria promised. Chips, wine, folding chairs. Half the women wore yoga pants, half the men hovered near the patio like they were waiting for a sports game to break out. No speeches, no schedule, just noise and tension pretending to be casual. The second we walked in, the room shifted. Not in a dramatic way, just that half-second pause. Heads turned, then turned back too fast. Conversations picked up again, voices just a little louder than before. My mother stood by the kitchen island with a wine glass already in her hand. Kimberly was leaning against the counter behind her, pretending not to see us. We didn't make a scene. We just found two open chairs in the living room and sat. Leah crossed her legs and looked around like she was in a museum. Calm, collected, watching. 30 minutes in, the room had loosened. People drinking, plates clinking, small talk flowing. Then Cousin Jeremy tapped his glass with a spoon. It wasn't loud, but it cut through the noise. Hey, if anyone wants to say a few words, feel free. Not formal or anything, just, family stuff. He sat back down like he regretted it immediately. The silence afterward stretched thin, and then eyes started drifting. Not to me, to Leah. No one stopped her. She didn't even glance at me for approval. She stood up slow and steady and raised her glass of ginger ale. Everyone froze. To being heard, she said. That's it. She sat back down like she'd just passed the salt. For a second, no one knew what to do. Then Maria clapped once. Someone else followed. It wasn't loud, it wasn't long, but it was real. My mom didn't clap. Kimberly didn't blink, but neither of them interrupted. And the silence that came after? That was the kind you earn, not awkward, not angry, just still. Like the whole room realized something had shifted, not just in Leah, but in the space they thought they controlled. She didn't have to prove anything. She didn't have to explain. She'd already said what she came to say, and this time, they listened. The chairs were cheaper, the lemonade was warm, and the backyard smelled like burnt hot dogs. It was one of those casual family afternoons where nothing's said outright, but everything's on trial. Leah and I stood near the fence, under the only bit of shade that hadn't been claimed. She was eating a cookie like it was a job, bored maybe, but holding the line. That's when I heard it. Mom's voice floated over from the patio, polished and sweet, too loud for the small group she was with. Oh, we were so proud of Leah. Always knew she had it in her. I even helped her with a few lines of that speech, didn't I, Kimberly? Kimberly didn't even blink. She jumped right in. Yeah, we told her she should share it. We just didn't want to pressure her. But it's so nice everyone finally got to hear her. I turned my head slightly, not enough to face them, just enough to listen. Leah didn't say a word. She kept chewing. Then, under her breath, without looking up, she muttered, Seriously? That one eyebrow shot up. Same one she gives when a teacher says something dumb in class. Just a twitch of disbelief, clean and earned. Maria caught the whole thing. She was sitting at the next table, drink in hand, sunglasses pushed up in her hair. She looked right at them, our mother and Kimberly, with a stare so blank it burned. Not angry, just done. She didn't say anything either. I leaned toward Leah just a little. They're not talking to people, I said. They're talking to their image. Leah swallowed her last bite. That's messed up. It is. She didn't push it further. Just stood there, watching the way our mom laughed a little too loud, and Kimberly waved her hand like she'd been the mastermind behind some emotional breakthrough. Leah wasn't mad, not exactly. She just saw it now, for what it was, and she didn't correct them. Neither did I. We didn't need to, because the truth already had legs, real ones. Not the kind you build in the kitchen after a bottle of wine, but the kind that carry themselves through small rooms and big silences. Everyone who mattered had already heard it, and nobody clapped for them.